Does anyone else just want to talk about how cool the Vasari are? Who doesn't love invading aliens with super technology that are stripping planets down to the core to steal their resources? I don't know about you, but I love them. So what we're doing today is we are going to do a deep dive into the Vasari tech tree. We're going to talk about planet items, we're going to talk about ship items, all that good stuff. This is intended to be almost a beginner's view of things. If you know enough to argue with me about the relative priority of things here, then this is not for you. This is for folks who are looking at these gigantic tech trees and are feeling overwhelmed and don't know what to start or necessarily what to prioritize. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about sort of the value of things, especially at the time that you get them. You know, once you get to tier 2, what are you looking at? Once you get to tier 3, what are you prioritizing amongst all these other things? Trying to establish a baseline of what's good and when you're getting it, what are you trying to get first, right? That makes a big deal in the game. And once you have something to work off of, your knowledge can grow organically from there. But at first, it's very overwhelming, so we're going to try and give you something to work with. Lots and lots to talk about. Let's just get going. Let's talk about it. So, Tier 1, we're looking at Empire research we are in the Vasari Exodus right now. We might get to the Vasari Alliance afterwards. We'll see what we're doing on time. Starting off with the Exodus, in Tier 1, what do we prioritize? Well, one of the first things that I really like, because you've got Tier 1 orbital extraction, that's a pretty common pickup for me. This allows you to get your metal and your crystal extractors online. The Vasari do not utilize credits except to, if you find some somewhere, find some loose change in someone's pocket, you can go buy stuff off the market, but all you care about is metal and crystal. So hurrying up early on to get orbital extraction up is a good way to modify and get extra income going. Let's go back to the top here. We do also like the labor camp unlock. It's very cheap and it speeds things up. It gives you a little bit of metal. This is a planetary item that you put on basically all of the planets that you get because it's very cheap. A little bit of metal income, and it makes everything else that you're building on that planet, on the planet's development, on the orbital structures, just go a lot faster. It's a big speed up. So I put these everywhere. I prioritize getting this quite early. And if you're getting it early, you might as well also get mass enslaved labor, which makes all the things that you're building cheaper as well. So it's just very cheap, very easy to just put this everywhere and get some nice economic benefits from it. So those are high priorities for me. I also like a very early emissary outreach. The nature of all the tier 1 stuff is it's quite cheap, it's quite quick and easy to get, so you'll probably grab just about everything in tier 1. But the emissary outreach we like because it gets our influence going so we can interact with minor factions. Obviously, any unlocks for planets that you get to are very important if you have access to those planets. I think the Vasari are unique in having tier 1 crystal occupation. I think everybody else's crystal occupation is a little further down the techs, but very rarely do you ever see close by crystal planets that you could occupy anyways. Special call out for the ferric transformation. This is another priority for me early on. This allows you to get more mining and more logistic slots on your home planet. So, and moving, of course, from mining 3 to mining 4 or mining 4 to mining 5 on the planet are bigger jumps in how much resources your planet's giving you. So this is an early pickup for me as well. I like it a lot. I also go for a pretty quick resource sublimation. This is extra mining rate for metal and for crystals on your planet. That's always good. This is not a whole lot early on, so it's slightly lower on my priority, but you do want it sooner rather than later. The nanite survey swarms. This you can hold off of for a little while. Usually you're not aching for extra exotics till maybe more like a tier 2 kind of timing of things. But having a better chance to get the bonuses is very nice, and this is cheap, so we love that too. Again, orbital exotic refinement we pushed a little later down the tech tree. I wouldn't even hate if this was in tier 2 somewhere. If I'm looking for early exotics, I'm often doing so by surveying the planets that I have, not by trying to build them out of orbital refineries. You'll need these probably later rather than sooner, I should say. Molecular assembly is another nice one. It's just a nice to have, makes your orbital structures build a little bit faster. Not an early game priority, but If we don't have anything else that we're doing with our research, we'd be happy to pick it up. Phase space monitoring is an interesting one. I think this is somewhat unique to the Vasari in that they just get to see if anyone's jumping towards any of our planets. So this is a good pickup. Not, again, at this tier 1 necessarily. You'd like it a little later on. You're not worried about people jumping on you when you've only got, one Empire research going. Later in the game, you definitely want to see if people are coming, and you get better bonuses for it later on. So this is a meh. We'll pick this up later. We're not worried about it early in the game. Phase resonators are interesting. So these are the things that give you your unique phase resonance resource. And what people often do is they will pick up phase resonator somewhat early. You don't need it right off the rip, but somewhat early you pick this up. You get about 3 of these spread out. And you get 3 because the first point in each of these columns cost only a single resonance, I guess is what it is. So you build 3, you get the first point, and then you sleep on it, because the second point costs, the second level unlock for each of these costs 2 resonance, so you'd need to build 2 additional orbital structures to get enough resonance to buff it up. And then it doesn't give you that much of a bonus. You're moving from 12% speed to 18% speed. An extra 6% is not that big. The third level gives you, unlocks additional bonuses. So the third level is great, but that's a whole bunch of resonance you need to get up there. So typically what you see people do, they unlock it early, they build 3 of them, they grab the first 3, and then they don't worry about it for a while. Come back to it later on when you've got the orbital slots or the time and the money to invest in it later on. Another interesting discussion is probably the mobile empire labs, mobile warfare labs. So these allow you to put research points directly onto your capital ships, which is pretty good, which is very good, because it frees up those ever so important civilian orbital slots for other stuff. But the downside is they're quite expensive. If I want to build one, it is 330 metal and 400 crystal. Meanwhile, on the planet, if I was just going to build a regular old lab, it's only 75. Now this one has some discounts on it, but it's roughly 75 metal and 100 crystal. So it's like 3 times more expensive to build your labs on your ships. So it does save you some space, especially if you're in a very tightly packed empire, you don't have a lot of planets to work with. It may make a lot of sense to try to move and expand your tech onto your warships. And these get better later on. Eventually you'll unlock tech that sort of doubles and quadruples the value of these labs, which is really, really good, but it's much later on. So the question is whether it's worth it early. It's tough, unless you're super slot deprived. I would probably save these for later. Let's go up to tier 2 here and keep talking. We've got the Indoctrination Center unlock on tier 2. So the principal use of this thing, so this is a planet item, the main use for this thing is to repel enemy culture coming in. That is early in the game rarely an issue, except maybe against the Dirty Advent, who might be doing a sort of a culture rush to put their culture on your planet so they can do all kinds of horrible Advent juju to you, all kinds of witchery. And in that case, Indoctrination Centers, this is a cheap tech to get, this is a cheap building planet item to unlock and build, and it does give you that extra influence point, towards working with minor factions, which is nice enough, but we only really get this if we're worried about getting culture pushed upon us, and we need to resist it. And I think it's the only thing we have that really grants any resistance. So it's sort of a niche application, but potentially an important one if someone's doing that sort of stuff to you. Unlocking extra influence points is quite good. We prioritize that. We want to move into some of the juicier mid-range options for our minor factions, often a very good choice. Zeno Relations. So this starts our own cultural push. Now, the Vasari have a pretty good one. The Vasari Exodus, I should say, has a pretty good one. Right off the bat, if you get your own culture on your planets, you're getting 12% extra mining from metal and crystal from the surface only, not orbital. But 12% is not bad, and we do get a lot of our resources from our surface mining, so it is probably worthwhile, and I wouldn't get it immediately upon getting to Empire 2. But eventually, you do want to try and push at least some very basic culture amongst your breadbasket planets. Just because it the extra 12% mining rate will pay for itself relatively quickly and will give us extra benefits down the line. If we are pushing culture a little bit more than normal and we can actually push it onto enemy planets, if we get this pushed onto an enemy planet that has factories, it reduces their factory build time, which is good if you can do it, but rarely a thing that you're trying to prioritize. If it happens, then pick this up. Otherwise, this is an easy pass, I think, Zeno Disruption. I do like relatively quickly, since we're building our labor camps everywhere, we might as well upgrade them to give us twice as much metal and twice as much reduced speed on building times. So picking up Communal Oppression, very cheap at 180 metal, 240 crystal. We pick this up right away upon getting to Empire 2. It's a high priority for us. Administrative uplinks are excellent buildings, building items, planet items, are buildings to put on planets as items. They give you the 3 extra orbital slots, and again, a little extra influence for your minor factions. These are great, but they do take the Kalinid, the blue exotic resource, so it can be hard to justify putting them out early in the game. Maybe if you've gotten a cache of some blue stuff, or you've got some very fast refineries online, you might be able to shift into this. These are a bit more of a luxury that I tend to build later in the game, just about anywhere I could put them out, because we love extra civilian orbital slots. That's always useful for us. Early on, they're kind of hard to justify the cost, though. Shock and Awe is a perfectly good one. Basically says if your ships damage the planet of the gravity well that you're in, then all of the enemy structures and that planet build, at half speed, which is pretty cool. If you're trying to attack a planet and you're worried about them building, rushing to build defenses at the same time, you can super slow that defense building down just by like one little shot at the planet kind of thing. But obviously that's kind of a niche scenario and relatively low priority. It's probably even more frequent that you kind of blow up all the defenses and then go bomb the planet. So this is a low priority for me. Maybe you pick it up later on, but it doesn't really move the needle for me. Upgrading your ice planets, all of your planets, makes good sense. If you have these planets, you should upgrade them to unlock the extra slots for them whenever you can. Extra emphasis on it if you have more than one of those planets. Here is your Terran planet unlocks as well. Here is your ocean planet unlocks come online. Even your desert planet unlocks. All pretty normal stuff there. I do like moving to improved orbital extraction. This is a little bit of a boost for your orbital rates, and you probably put some extra emphasis early in the game on getting orbital extractors up, so making them give you more is always good. The Vasari economy always feels like it is starved for something. Maybe you've got a lot of metal, but you don't have enough crystal. Maybe you've got a lot of crystal, but you don't have quite enough metal. A lot of their things are expensive, and your benefits take a while to get online. You've got some really good percentage bonuses for stuff, but they don't kick in right away. You need land and space and upgrades to get it all really going. So anything we could do to boost our metal and our crystal rates, we like and we prioritize pretty quickly. Interesting one here is the metal nanites and the crystal nanites. So these are cost an endurium. Is it an endurium to unlock or to build even? That's a good question. I think it's just a cost to unlock. So I think you have to pay an exotic to either get the tech in the first place, one white for the metal or one blue for the crystals, and then once you unlock it, you can build them very cheaply in all the planets. So what these do is they're just a flat bonus to a planet's income of metal or a planet's income of crystal. They are surface mining, so they do get benefited by the surface mining rates of other techs and things that we have here. Typically, you have a bit more metal as the Vasari, and you're usually hurting for crystal. So what I find 90% of the time is I could always use more crystal, and this is a relatively easy investment to make here. I typically will unlock crystal nanites and just put them on all the planets that I can. Again, planets, not asteroids. But this is just boom, we make extra crystal now. So that is a nice little economic balance. If you find yourself in a particular map layout where you have a lot of crystal for some reason and not a lot of metal, you could pivot and put the metal nanites everywhere. But I wouldn't get both. I would pick just one, whichever one you need most of, and focus on that. We also have the entanglement filtering, which is another boost to our surface mining rate. It's very cheap. We love it. We get it right away. And we start getting improved reactor design. This is extra antimatter for our ships. Antimatter is very important, so we like this a lot. We picked this up if we're planning on doing any actual fighting with our ships and things. Down here, trauma nanomedicine. This is a pass for me until much later. It's quite cheap, but reducing the bombing damage that your planets take by 12% is negligible, hardly noticeable. You know, if you have nothing else to do, you could pick this up, but I do not care. I almost never even get it. Mobile exotic refinement. Now this is an interesting one. Just like we could put our mobile labs on our capital ships, we could put a mobile exotic refinery on our capital ships. And this one to me makes a little bit more sense, right? If we want to build a refinery on the planet, it takes up a whopping 3 civilian orbital slots, at least 400 metal, 250 crystal, probably a little bit more than that. And if we want to put it on our ships, it's only 575 metal, 450 crystal. So more expensive, but it only takes up, 1 ship item versus it taking 3 civilian orbital slots. So I think it's a much better bargain to build your exotic refineries on your ships. They may blow up, but try not to let that happen. I usually build a couple exotic refineries on my ships because it can be kind of hard coming up with those extra 3 orbital slots when you want so many orbital slots for so many other juicy things. Here we have extended range sensors, which lets you see guys coming at you from 2 jumps away. That's fine, we don't care too much about it, but it'll be nice eventually. Long range jumps, this you have to pick up if you're playing in a map that has multiple stars to be able to jump between different stars. If you don't have multiple stars, if you're playing in only a single star, then you can skip this the entire game and just ignore it completely. The resonance amplifier. So this is a ship item that increases how long the resonance bonus will affect that ship. This is a hard pass for me, I don't care. Optimize phase drives. These let you jump 25% faster, basically between systems. This is pretty good. It's pretty cheap, so we pick this up whenever you've got the spare time. It's not a high priority, but it is a very nice to have. And then down below, we've got a mobile adjunct lab. This speeds up your research rate. This is very rarely something I'm putting on my ships. We have a lot of things competing with space on our Vasari Exodus ships, so I'm not putting 18% faster research. If you really want faster research, you could just research it on your planets, build it on your asteroids. This is a pass for me most of the time. Let's move on. Tier 3 civilian tech. We start getting local enforcers. This is mostly a pass for me unless I want the deeper stuff in the tree for some reason. A little extra culture rate, a little extra influence recharge rate is fine. Influence recharge rate is actually quite good. I guess the culture rate's the part I don't care about as much about. But Zeno mining, however, that it unlocks is very, very, very good. Suddenly, the 12% bonus from being in friendly culture becomes 36% bonus. That's actually triple the strength of it. This is wonderful. We like this a lot. If you've wisely spread some culture to your mining planets that are making a lot of your income for you, this makes them all the more better. We love Zeno mining. Full lockdown, another straight upgrade to your labor camps. So this is an easy one to pick up relatively early on. We like it a lot. Down here we've unlocked gas giant occupation, some extra planet stuff. So there are some interesting planet stuff to talk about here. And what I want to talk about is our organic reclamation nanites. So, one second. Sip of water. Our organic reclamation nanites are a huge boost to our surface mining of metal and crystals for Terran planets, but also for primordial planets. So we can take our, the tooltip just says Terran planets, but we can definitely see, if we look at a primordial planet, we can absolutely build an organic reclamation nanites here. And why that's important is Terran planets are somewhat rare and we're sort of unlikely to get them, but primordial planets are much more common. We're totally likely to find primordial planets mixed up with our volcanic planets, with our ice planets, and they have a pretty decent mining track on them. You get them all the way maxed out on mining. It's 2.4, 1.6, which is fine, but 2.4 and 1.6, and we double that with our organic reclamation nanites. Suddenly, it's making almost as much metal as a fully upgraded volcanic planet and almost as much crystal as a fully upgraded crystal planet, or ice planet rather. So our organic reclamation nanites, a really powerful pickup if you have access to the likes of primordial or Terran planets. These can be a really nice juice for the old economy there. Likewise, if we somehow have an ocean planets, which are quite rare, but you sometimes see a couple, we have a unique tech here, our ocean floor miner, which is 150% extra surface rate mining for our ocean planets. So that can make them, again, quite lucrative economically for us. Ocean planets and primordial planets, we keep a special eye out for them. They could be really nice later on. What do we got? We got extra mining. That's good. Not like a immediately must-have, but we like it eventually. This one I like quite a bit. A matter hypercompiler unlock. This is a surface and an orbital mining boost. Now these get expensive. We'll talk about these again later. I think they cost rare resources, but we like them a lot. I prioritize getting matter hypercompilers. For me, this is really when the Vasari economy comes online. You can get down here your atomic sorting to get extra surface mining. You can get extra orbital mining. You can start building matter hypercompilers that give you even more and more mining. You can sometimes get up to the Zeno mining where your culture is also buffing your mining rates, and suddenly your income really can kind of explode at this phase, and you could really start buying just about anything you want. It really starts moving into a luxury phase of how much you have, how many resources you have. The Debris Reclamation Center. This, I think, is a unique Exodus tech, if I'm not mistaken. This one says any ships that are destroyed, and not your own, any enemy ships that are destroyed, within 2 jumps of this facility give you rebates of 18% metal, 18% crystal salvaged. It's really, really good. If you fight a huge fleet and you destroy 1,000 supply of ships, and you get 18% of all the resources that were spent to make those ships, at least the metal and the crystal. This is obviously incredibly good against other Vasari whose ships are entirely built out of metal or crystal and none of those wasteful credits. This is really, really great. We like this a lot, the Debris Reclamation Center. If we have a good place to put it, right? You sort of want one anywhere that you want them to be sort of covering all your planets so that if you're on the defensive, you'll get benefits. And you want them covering, the front lines, where if you're at the front fortress planets or pushing into the enemy's territory, you still get these salvage benefits. They can be a lot of resources. And these are pretty cheap to build as well. Antimatter recharge of ship items. We love it. We love more antimatter. Optimized reactors. We love it. We love more antimatter. Quarnium forging. We don't need this now, but we will need it eventually. We're going to need to have the quarnium to do our higher end tech, to build our Titan, to do some of those really rare, unique things we need quarnium for. Right when you hit tier 3, you probably don't care about quarnium for some time, right? But once you are getting up to like the 15 research points and you're about to go into tier 4, you will want to pick up quarnium then. Wormhole stabilization is for jumping between wormholes. Again, if you're on a map that doesn't have wormholes, you don't care at all. If you're on a map that has a bunch of wormholes, this might be a priority in order to be able to utilize those. Phase gates are really powerful, really cool. Now these do take the quarnium, so they're making a liar out of me. You could get your phase gates in tier 3, and then you would need the quarnium to start powering them, to start building them. Phase gates allow you basically to jump directly from any system that has a phase gate, direct straight line to any other system that has a phase gate. So they can really, really, really speed up transport in some of those long maps where you're far from home and you need to be able to have a line back to your factories for reinforcements, or you need a line back to your home planet to defend it. whatever reason you might need that, there's a long jump available if you've got phase gates between the two places. So these are fantastic. We love them. Phase gates unlocks are great. I often don't prioritize them. It's very map dependent, but I don't prioritize these till a bit later in the game, not necessarily right when I'm hitting tier 3. Phasic Strike, this one's great if you move in. So the buffs that you get from your phase resonance, you get as soon as you jump into a system, and then they last for a certain amount of time. Like, I don't even know it off the top of my head. It's maybe 60 seconds or something. But if we get this Phasic Strike, it adds an extra 2 minutes onto that time before those buffs fall off. So, and it just affects all the buffs everywhere, and it's relatively cheap. This is an easy pickup. We like Phasic Strike. Dark Fleet Tower unlock. Now this isn't interesting. This is a planet item that we'll talk about later when we get to the planet items. It's sort of niche, kind of fun, but not super impactful. I oftentimes will even skip it unless I see a really unique scenario where I'll be able to utilize it, because they're a little expensive as well. Not a high priority for me. Gravity stabilizers, very low priority for me. It does turn one of your capital ships into a race car. You could, in theory, put it all in all of your capital ships to make them go super fast, but again, we're fighting on our ships for space with all the many items we want to put on them. I usually skip gravity stabilizers since it only affects a single unit, and rarely am I like, I just want this one guy to go much faster. No, I want my whole fleet to go faster, and this doesn't do that. Phase jump inhibitors are very important, very great. These keep the enemy from being able to jump through your front lines and go deeper into your territory unless they destroy this. So this is very important if you have choke points, if you have sort of like fortress systems set up that you want to be able to have your defenses fight the enemy. Well, the enemy could always just jump past your defenses and go further into your lands unless you have a phase jump inhibitor built to stop them from jumping away. And then down here we have the enhanced mobile research. If you had gone for the Empire Labs this on your ships, this makes them twice as good. It makes them move from giving you 1 point to giving you 2 points. So this can be very, very useful, and it makes the value proposition of putting them on your ships much better too. So if you haven't, or maybe you've held off until tier 3 and you've gotten this tech, now you could put these on your ships for a much more reasonable cost and jump straight from the 8 points you need from tier 3 to the 15 points you need from tier 4. That's a pretty good pickup. I like that quite a bit. I often end up doing something just like that. Okay, let's talk tier 4. Now we're starting to get into the really luxury stuff here. A lot of folks think once you get to tier 4, your game is often quite decided. Although sometimes you may end up in those great big brawls on a 10-player map where you play for 4 hours, and who knows how long it's going still. But here we go, tier 4. We've got the Exodus Zeno Embassy unlock. This is another planet item that yet again gives us more influence rates, and influence points, and influence recharge rate. This is usually not a high priority for me. I find a lot of the minor factions abilities a lot more impactful in the sort of mid-game, and the end-game ones not as much. But if you were leaning into the ability to maybe do some cool stuff like summon a protection fleet, or send a pirate raid, or send a phase space raid, or repeatedly use the enemy's exotic vault access, some of those late game things, it might be useful to pick up, but it's not a high priority for me. I don't often end up building too many Zeno embassies. If I've gone for a bit of culture, this gives us an extra influence recharge rate for our culture, and also unlocks the Zeno corruption. If you've been able to push your culture onto the enemy, this is super strong. Anything that your culture touches now makes only half as much of resources. So this is one of the good reasons to try to push your Vasari Exodus culture on people. It's very strong at the end game, can really hurt people if it gets on them, but there's a lot of ways to stop culture from pushing it. All they have to do is also invest in some cultural resistance, also build some of their own culture stuff, and they keep you from pushing your colored lines onto them. But if you can get it there, this does great work. Zeno corruption's pretty good. I don't often play these guys as too cultural. I do a little bit in my home planets to take advantage of the 36% extra rates, but I'm not often trying to push it on enemy planets too much. We also have the Administrative Specialist. This is a straight upgrade for these planet slots, orbital slots that I talked about earlier liking. I liked it at +3 slots. I sure as heck like it at +6 civilian orbital slots. It's really good. If we're going to tier 4, I love it. This one is sort of an interesting, if you manage to get access to gas planets, which are somewhat rare, this is a straight upgrade of a whole bunch of extra crystal on them. We don't hate that. This one is one of the defining parts of the Vasari Exodus, stripped to the core. So what this does is this, once you unlock this, it allows you to build these very cheap core stripper items on planets. After you build this item on a planet, you abandon the planet, and the way you do that is by going to the menu and you say scuttle. You scuttle the planet. After you scuttle the planet, it has a long cooldown to do so, but then it gets stripped to the core. It basically permanently destroys that planet and gives you a huge influx of resources, you know, thousands and thousands of metal and crystal for stripping a planet kind of thing. But you lose everything in that system, stops working, and that planet stops producing anything that planet made, right? So it is, to do it to all of your own planets is a decision where you're basically saying, hey, we're gonna go, you can play the Vasari as this mobile play style where all of your civilization lives on your capital ships and you've blown up all the planets that you see. Now that is extremely cool, not always advisable. Stripped to the core works a lot better if you can push into enemy territory or maybe risky territory that will be hard to defend for long periods of time. And then maybe you just strip out that risky territory of resources, but while still keeping your own sort of home territory secure. But, you know, I'm not your mother. Do what you want. Strip to the core, super cool, pretty useful in the end game in certain niche scenarios as well. I would say, I think I've seen the numbers on this, and for the most part, the resources you get for stripping planets is roughly between like 30 to 50 minutes of time that planet would produce those resources. So if you strip a planet and you take all the resources, you've got, you know, a 30-minute head start on what that planet would have given you if you didn't strip it to the core. If the game's going to go for an hour or more after that, then you would have just gotten more by just letting that planet, you know, keep producing for you, kind of thing. Rest of these are not too exciting. Planet upgrades, no big deals. Get them if you got those planets. Superior orbital extraction. It's kind of a small boost, but it's still a boost. It's fine. Matter decompilation. This is actually a big boost, 48% to 72%. This is another really nice economic upgrade for the faction. We pick this up every time. Extra antimatter. We like it. We pick it up every time. Optimized construction. We like it. We pick it up every time. This makes factory units cost basically 20% cheaper. You know, your spaceships are all 20% cheaper, and building anything in orbit is 20% cheaper. That's great, because you're probably still going to be building lots of stuff. You're probably going to be making lots of spaceships, and if you do so, having a 20% discount is wonderful. We love optimized construction. Artificial longevity, which is, you know, 100% faster planet health regeneration. This is a pass for me. I rarely care how fast my planet health is regenerating. If I did for some reason, and I've been playing for 4 hours, maybe I pick this up, but I don't care. Resonance Mastery is great. Again, another 2 minutes added on to how long your resonance buffs linger on you. And at this point in the game, you're probably beyond, you know, your 3 resonance points. You're getting a whole bunch of points, and you've got some really nice resonance buffs that you'd like to sit on your ships for a while. Jump inhibitor immunity. This just allows you to send your scout ships to jump past jump inhibitors. Rarely useful, maybe if you really need to see deeper into someone's territory for what they're doing, but oftentimes your navigators will just get blown up before they can even jump through systems that are jump immune. I rarely see a use for it. It doesn't tickle my pickle. Tier 5, there's almost nothing here. We have highly attuned sensors to grants detection of any starship anywhere in the game performing a phase jump. Very great. But at this point in time, you know, this is the luxury of luxuries out here. We would love to see every ship in the game that is jumping places. Could be a little overwhelming with knowledge, but it does give you some incredible knowledge about what's going on in the galaxy. Mobile resonance capacitors. This is a really good one, but again, being in a tier 5, it's so late in the game. So this basically is, if you have this on a ship and your ship goes into a system, you collect onto that ship the resonance, the phase resonance for this stuff that you would get otherwise by building in that system, just by kind of flying into the system. So it's a way to really keep boosting up your resonance levels to really high later in the game, especially if you are moving around to a lot of different systems, maybe in a gigantic 100-planet galaxy or something like that. We also have a buff to the Dark Fleet Tower. It's a pretty mild buff. It's 50% of what was already kind of a low number, but it's fine. Maybe if you're using Dark Fleet Towers to do some shenanigans, might as well buff them up. And our last one is our Advanced Mobile Research, which seems kind of pointless to me, but your Mobile Empire labs, it makes them from 1 point to 2 points in the middle, and then at the end here it makes them 4 points for each lab. I guess the thought is, if you're going fully remote, you're going to be a remote office worker, you're working out of your capital ship from here on out, you're not going to have any labs in any of your orbital slots because you're stripping all your planets to the core. You might need this in order to keep your research high enough to keep researching things that you haven't gotten yet. Otherwise, by the time, if you're not stripping those planets out, if you're already in tier 5, you don't really need the extra research points, right? All right, that's our Empire research, our civilian research. Let's jump over to warfare. We got lots to go still. Warfare research tier 1, obviously we like max supplies, and interestingly the Vasari have a little extra supplies than everybody else. Their max supply is 300. I believe the other factions supply out at 250 at this rank. The next one up we get 600, other factions get 500, so the Vasari can always build a little extra than everybody else can. They have slightly larger fleets. We've got the Sulsarak Defensor. This one is technically for hunting down missiles and strike crafts and corvettes. This is kind of your own corvette class ship that has point defense on it. I rarely find it actually that useful. It gets blown up super quick. It doesn't do that amazing a job at blowing up enemy missiles and or strike craft. Maybe if you're in an extremely missile strike craft heavy environment, you could try some of these, but they just don't seem to work great for me. I'm often passing them. The Tussarak Raider is a pretty incredible ship. This is a very PvP oriented ship. What you often will see is Vasari PvP players picking up raiders and grabbing 10, 15, 50, some amount early on, just enough to hit a critical mass of there being kind of dangerous, and flying into the enemy's fleets, or the enemy's planets. And these are very fast ships, and they have missiles on them that do good have good pierce, are capable of killing buildings, and they get rebates of resources when they're damaging buildings. So what they do is you'll make a bunch of these, you'll fly into the enemy's system, you dodge all of their defenses, or if they only have maybe 1 or 2 defenses, you could even blow them up with these ships. But you focus on blowing up all the enemy's orbital structures, you fly away, you jump to the next system, you blow up some critical orbital structures, you fly away, you do these hit and run attacks, and they're very fast, so it's a really difficult strategy to shut down. It's really hard for a lot of factions, if they haven't thought about it or prepared for it, to counter. So this is a super tough play style to deal with. Enemies constantly raiding you with the Tussarak Raiders, very strong. Doesn't work as well against the AI who kind of cheats and just builds like 1 million defensive turrets on top of all of their structures. I haven't had great success with it, but sometimes that does work as well if you get them early enough going. They're a bit expensive. I think they take some crystals early on, which are maybe harder to come by at this tier 1 stage in the game. But the Raiders, they're not a fleet fighter, but they are sneaking behind, blowing up enemy orbital structures, and they are great at that. The Overseer is not a very exciting ship. It has sort of a debuff it can put on enemy units. I think it slows enemy unit attack speed down. Can we build one of these things?
Why do we delay?
Where's our Overseer? Reduces enemy combat effectiveness.
We must
Now we gotta
hurry.
find where we built it.
Mining upgrade complete.
So this guy has an ability where it says enemy ships within range suffer a minus 15% damage penalty, which is pretty decent actually. My problem with it is it has so the range around it is decent, but it kind of stays far back. It doesn't. You have to like manually grab it and sort of like fly it towards the enemy fleet to make it be within range to put that debuff on it. And then it's reasonably tanky, but people will just blow it up because oftentimes you only have maybe one or two of these because they don't have any guns on them. Sort of a niche element that it's good to have a couple of them if you're going to be able to micro them around and use them. They also have these mobile phase detection you can research, so you could see if enemy fleets are jumping towards wherever your fleet is. That's kind of nice, kind of niche. Not very exciting for me. I don't often utilize too much, or maybe more than one or two of them. Improved pulse concentrators. Your light frigates shoot pulse weapons, so you pick this up to juice up your light frigates. Your beams, most of your good damaging capital ships use beam weapons, so we upgrade beams whenever we get a chance. And then the Vasari have a lot of upgrades for hull points, hull regeneration, armor points. This line even does like turn speed and acceleration and extra armor points. All of this stuff is really good. It's not like a must-have immediate beeline for me, but we pick these up as soon as we can, especially the likes of the armor points and the speed and acceleration. The Vasari have a lot of sort of good redundant armor systems, or defensive systems. They get access to some shielding, they have really good armor, they have a really good hull and hull regeneration. Just a lot of great options there. So these are things we... Like, again, we're not prioritizing fast, but we pick them up anyways because all of these will be great force multipliers for our fleets. And finally, way at the bottom, we've got this little defensive uplink. I'm not super sold on this one, but it's a planet item that gives you little extra orbital slots, military orbital slots, and weapon damage and range only for your defensive structures, not for your defensive fleets or anything like that. So if you're trying to build a great big fortress with a lot of defenses, it would be nice to have one of these up, but otherwise not that important. Tier 2, we love supplies. The big winner of Tier 2 is our Conrock Assailant. These are our missile frigates, and they are very, very good. I believe we're seeing maybe a toning down, maybe a nerf to some missile interactions in the coming patches, because right now, missile ships are very meta, very, very strong. It's totally likely that a Vasari fleet may have like 50 of these or more. And if you've got 50 of these guys fire missiles that have a high armor pierce value, so they are very, very good at killing capital ships. And if you've got 50 of them, they're going to delete a capital ship every 2 or 3 volleys that they're able to fire off. So these are super high DPS, very cost effective. You can make a ton of them. They're not expensive. They have a really long range. These are great, great, great ships. The backbone of the Vasari fleets currently. We might see them nerfed and we might see missiles rebalanced a bit. We'll see. Right now, we love Conrock Assailants. The Destructors here, these are your planet assault ships. They don't have any guns on them, except they have the ability to bombard planets. This is sort of a niche pick. If you need to be bombarding planets faster for some reason, pick this up. But rarely is that the linchpin of your success, how fast you can bombard a planet. So we don't worry about these too much. They're also used for some niche strategies where maybe you could jump in and blow up an enemy's planet before they're able to respond with defenses kind of thing, in which case they're good, but they're somewhat expensive to build and they take up a lot of fleet points, and I'd rather have a fleet that wins the space battle, right? Rather than one that just goes and sneaky blows up their planet. Vask Tacticians is great, extra experience points for the many capital ships that we will have. We don't need it immediately, but we will pick it up eventually. Likewise, second generation crews. This basically says your ships will all come out at level 2 rather than level 1. And ship levels are very important on our capital ships. So if we're building capital ships, and we probably are, we like this. This does cost an extra exotic to buy, which is, I don't love that. I wish it was cheaper. So this is maybe held off till a little later on. We don't need it immediately when we hit Warfare 2. It would be nice if we had that extra yellow exotic around, but you may not. These are just weapon upgrades. Lots of things have wave weapons, but they're not like the primary weapon on them. We pick up wave densification eventually, but it's a low priority. Likewise, the wave modulator is a very low priority. Waves are not usually the primary weapon on a lot of our battleships, so we're not sticking that on them. Beams we like, beam modulators we like. Pinpoint bombardment lets you bomb planets from much further away. Very, very niche. You could go the whole game without getting this if you wanted to and still be just fine bombing planets from up close. But it's cheap. We could always pick it up eventually, so very luxury, nice to have, or just a pass if you want to. Precise turret servos here gives us some faster point defense weapon tracking. That's a good thing. We like that. We don't have tons of point defense to work with. Mostly it's just sort of on our capital ships or on some of our more niche things. I guess the heavy cruiser, the Oppressor, has like one little point defense on it. Point defense is something that the Vasari are kind of lacking, so it at least makes what we have in point defense slightly better, but not overall super impactful. Down here we've got extra armor regen, extra hull regen. These are good ones. We like these. This also unlocks the regeneration bay, which is the structure that we can build in orbit in order to do regeneration on things. This is very, very good. We like that a lot if we're building any sort of static defenses. Regeneration bays, anything that can do repair, any of the structures that can do repairs on your static defenses, make your static defenses way, way, way better in the long term. Likewise, we've got bomber armor unlock. That's often a pass for me. I'm not a big fan of bomber armor. But we also are starting to get into shield upgrades. You know, shield regeneration cooldown, max shield points, and extra shield regeneration. These are both good. We like anything that adds extra armor or hull or shield onto our ships, is increasing the survivability of everything, and it's good. We like it. And then nothing down here for tier 2. Up to tier 3, we have two fast, unlocks, two fast, two furious unlocks for 900 supply and 1500 supply. The 900 supply is very good. Get that right away, and then pick up your 1500 supply once you've maxed out at 900, because it's starting to get expensive here. We also have access to some of our big cruisers here. Your Oppressor is your heavy cruiser. This is your main frontline tanky warship. These are great. We make lots of them. The Lacerak Transporter is your carrier cruiser. It carries a bunch of strike craft. Strike craft are quite good in the game, so these are totally good if you want to play the strike craft kind of thing. Notably, the Vasari have access only to bombers. They have no fighters, but their bombers are quite good, so the transporters are pretty solid. I don't often go huge transporter blobs as the Vasari. I'm much more like a mix of oppressors and assailants, because the oppressors can blow up anything small and the assailants can blow up anything big, and you've just got all your bases covered with that, so those work really nicely. We've also got the Fabricator Cruiser unlocked. So this is a support ship that can follow you around. So what you can do is I believe it allows you to build frigate class and corvette class vessels just out of itself. You can also give it this excellent upgrade of the debris reclamation. So just like that planet build slot that gave you access to getting the debris of things you blow up, now anywhere you send your Fabricator Cruiser, you can get a slightly smaller buff and getting the debris, and you can upgrade it later on to a higher version as well. And then the last one down here allows a retrofitting. So this allows you to change the items on your ships faster. This is somewhat niche because I'm not often like swapping the items around on my ships out in the middle of space far from home, but maybe I am, and if I am, it would be really nice to have the mobile retrofit set up. So a low priority pickup, but if you can put a couple extra fabricators in your fleet for the debris reclamation, for the retrofit, for just the ability to build extra ships on the fly, that can be quite useful. Extra weapon unlocks just does a percentage more damage. Nice to have, not a high priority. If we're using lots of missiles though, and we probably are with our assailants, we do love going straight into better missiles, enemy warheads, just for extra weapon damage. And then the phase missile is an unlock for ship items. We'll talk about that when we get to the ship items. Down here, more of the same, better regeneration base, fine. Extra nano hull plating's quite good, extra for hit points. Flawless armor is a wonderful tech, extra speed and acceleration and armor points. We love all of those things. We picked this up right away. Here's a phase attenuated shield, not a high priority as a ship item. We'll talk about that with ship items for me. But we're starting to get to some of the juicy defensive stuff, so we can now use our Orculus Starbase. So this is our gigantic offensive structure, or defensive structure. It becomes an offensive structure later. We'll talk about that. We also have access early, I believe. I believe most people have most of the factions have deploy Starbase unlocks in like tier 4, maybe even tier 5. Vasari get it in tier 3. So what you can do basically with this is load an entire starbase onto your ship's item, fly your ship anywhere you want it, and just unload that starbase wherever your ship is. Yes, you could even fly into the enemy's gravity well and unload the starbase. And it builds slower if you do that, but it does still build, so it is a way to push your starbases out into the universe. And one of the most interesting ways is you can put these into empty systems, like a system that is just asteroid debris, or a system that is just the star. And I believe if it's around the star, it even allows you to deploy 4 star bases. There's not the normal limit of 1 star base, but a star in particular allows 4 star bases deployed in it if you really want to defensively lock down a star for some reason. It's not super practical, but it's very fun. Debris reintegration is an unlock for starbases. We'll talk about that with items. There's a boost for our defensive uplink, making it twice as good. And it was already kind of meh, so twice as good as meh is probably okay at that point in time. It does take a bunch of exotics to unlock, though, Kalinid and Endurium, so it's a low priority to me. You know, the Vasari are a much more aggressive race. They're usually the ones who are doing the attacking, and they're not as often the ones who are relying upon super heavy defenses. But, you know, your mileage may vary. Maps and games can change quite a bit. Let's jump up to tier 4 tech here. Of course, we've got extra supply we love. The Vulcarak Penetrator. An interesting ship. This is your Starbase Buster. It has super, super high pierce damage to get through high durability targets, like Starbases. It can really wreck capital ships as well. The trouble is the range on it is extremely short. It needs to get like basically within melee range. It's got to run up and punch the other ship in the face, which is hard to do, and it really incentivizes the enemy to just blow these all up right away. These are not used too often. They're good at their job, but the trouble is right now the assailant with missiles does basically the same job from like 10 times further away and a significant cheaper cost. So the niche just isn't really there for, you know, the Vulcarak Penetrator. It doesn't do anything we weren't already doing back in tier 3 for us. We can blow up starbases just fine with a bunch of Conrack assailants and stuff. We do like the improved debris reclamation. If you're having fabricators follow you around, go ahead and pick that up for a little extra income. 3rd generation crews, extra levels for our capital ships. If we're still building out capital ship fleets, and we probably are, you know, the Vasari love capital ships, so making them better. And this is expensive with 3 yellow exotics in order to do this research for the 2nd generation. Oh, the 2nd generation crew is 1, and then it's 2 more yellow exotics, I think, to do this one. Still kind of expensive, but worthwhile because we love our capital ships. Weapon upgrades, you know, we like them. We like an emphasis on beams if we've got a lot of capital ships. We like maybe an emphasis on pulse weapons if we've got a lot of, I don't know, these are really your skirmishers. I think the oppressors actually use wave weapons. Let me double check that super quick. Where's an oppressor? This guy. Yep, he shoots 4 wave cannons. So maybe we don't need that pulse gun at the end of the game. If you've already done the transition from not using so many of your light frigates to mostly using your oppressors aren't using pulse weapons at all. They're using the wave weapons. So maybe it makes sense to lean more into the wave damage rather than the pulse damage at the end of the game. But I don't know, all this stuff is fine. If we've gone into the beam modulators to buff up our capital ships, we like making them twice as good. That's a big damage increase for our capital ships. We love missiles as well. Extra phase missile damage is great if we've got a lot of missile ships, and we probably do. This one is wave weapon tracking speed and weapon range, heavy turret servos. So this is Impactful, again, if we've gone heavy into those oppressor heavy cruisers. It lets them target faster ships easier, and a little bit more range, almost unnoticeable, but the tracking speed can actually do some good stuff. If there's faster ships or a lot of ships moving around, it might help the oppressors to lock on and hit them. Not a high priority for me, but it's relatively cheap and easy enough to get. Improved bulkheads is great. An extra, 24% hull. No, what is it? It's an extra 18%. That's a weird number. It's an extra 18% hull points. I mean, we don't hate it. And then finally, we have the multi-pass shield array, a big boost to our shields and all of our ships. That's a nice pickup as well. And a whole bunch of cool stuff for our starbase. We can now double the speed, so notably the Vasari starbases can fly around. Okay, they can slowly move around the system, and we can now make them fast move around the system, or at least reasonable speed. They can double their speed to make them move more quickly. We also can lock the shield array. This stops people from being able to damage the planet if the starbase is still in there. This is the way to counter maybe the enemy advent from culture bombing, maybe enemy tech primacy from blasting you with Nova missiles, or who knows what else is going on. But this protects your planet as long as your starbase is up. Extra armor for the starbase, that's a reasonable unlock. A lot of these are items for the starbase, so we'll talk about it with items. But we do have the assault deployment here. Now this is if you've gone into carrying a starbase around in your back pocket to drop on the enemy. This lets you drop it way, way faster. So normally you have a 250% penalty to building in an enemy gravity well. If you've gotten this tech, it's only a 50% penalty, which means that starbase might actually get built during this fight. And it removes the penalty entirely from dropping them in neutral wells. So if you're going to be dropping them places, you absolutely want to pick up assault deployment so that you could drop them much faster. Finally, we have the unlock for our fabulous Vorastra Titan, one of the funnest ones to use. A lot of cool abilities for him. We like the Titan. We have the mobile rulership unlock. So this is again part of that mobile playstyle. This one says if we lose our home planet or all of our planets, our empire still survives as long as we have the ship with this item on it. So, naturally you might build your Titan and put your mobile rulership on it. And that's another way to keep yourself from getting killed, from getting sniped out, or maybe just from staying alive if you've been wiped out and had to migrate to your teammate's space, or if you've wiped yourself out by stripping all your planets and you still need to stay alive when you do that. Mobile rulership's an interesting upgrade. Mobile fleet beacon, this is an item that lets you turn any of your capital ships into factories that could build other ships. Very expensive to build, but pretty good one. Pretty good one if you're traveling across the galaxy and you want to be able to reinforce the front lines. Yet another ship item to find space for on your capital ships. Finally, Tier 5, and what is an awful lot of tech for Tier 5, the luxury of luxury techs. We can move up to 2400 supply. We can upgrade our wave damage and our beam damage and our missile damage. Now this one I don't like. Phase missile bypass shield chance. Maybe it's good, but for me, so the phase missiles for Vasari, the missiles that they shoot all have a chance to just pass through the enemy shields and do direct damage to the armor or the hull. Now you'd think that is cool, but you're still 99% of the time you're still burning through the shields before you kill a unit, because the shields are often not as big a defensive part as the armor is, as the hull is. So burning through the shields slightly more, rarely impactful. Maybe this does move the needle. I guess I haven't done like a lot of testing in Tier 5 with whether or not I'm piercing people's shields well enough, but I don't like it. Superior warheads for extra damage on the missiles, we do like. We like that one a lot. And then this one upgrades the item. This is, again, a massive upgrade to our hull regeneration. Super fun. This one is a massive upgrade to our armor for stuff. Super fun. Armor is a very, very valuable damage mitigation effect. We can also unlock the ability to phase jump with our starbases. No longer do we have to deploy our Orculus starbases in the enemy gravity well and wait for them to build. We can instead slap a phase jump drive on them and just teleport them, just jump from our system straight into the enemy's system with the Orculus starbase. kind of memey, but very fun when it works out. If you've got some sort of end game stalemate, it's quite useful to just bring a fully armed and operational battle station along with you into that end game stalemate battle. Finally, some upgrades for our Titan that are not too impactful. Boom, that's our tech. Let's talk items, because we've gone for a while here. We'll talk items with our ships first. We've discussed how there are many things competing for our slots. All these infrastructure buildings. You know, do we want extra research points? Do we want extra refineries? Do we want to build the fleet beacon and things? Those are all good. And we talked about those at length already, though. Let's talk about some of the offense, defense, and utility stuff. Rarely are we getting the wave. No, let's go with the first one. The first one's the nano attack swarm. This is a pretty rare pickup because it has a finite use count and it only is single target damage. It's not like the radiation bomb for the TEC, which can hit a whole blob and get you some good value. This does a reasonable amount of single target damage. Early game, if you're maybe in a real tight, low numbers battle, this might help to turn the tide slightly because you could put a little extra damage on an enemy critical ship. But I pass it almost all the time. I'd rather just spend those resources elsewhere. The beam modulator is pretty good. If we look at a number of our ships, you know, our main fighting ships, the Devastator, our battleship, uses 6 beams for most of its DPS, so we'd be happy to make those better. Even our Evacuator, our Egg, our starting ship, is mostly beams that for the damage it's putting out. So if we're trying to upgrade the damage here, we want to upgrade our beam damage. We get to the other ships, the Desolator, which is probably another one of our big fighting ships. This one's mostly missiles, but still a bit of beam damage he's putting out. The Carrier and the Marauder are much more varied weapon profiles, so it's harder to buff them up specifically. But we do like beam modulators on our Devastators, probably on our Evacuators, and that's probably about it. The phase missile augments, these are plus phase missile damage. We like those really just on our Desolators, which have these heavy phase missiles on them. We're happy to boost those heavy phase missiles up even bigger. They become really great capital ship slaying units. And we often will skip the wave modulator because just a lot of our ships are not really doing wave damage. And we only got 4 slots to work with. We got to make them count, right? For the defense, we have the Nano Repair Swarm. Again, kind of like the Nano Attack Swarm, a very niche early game use kind of thing. Maybe if it's a real nail biter, it might help turn the tide, but oftentimes it's just not useful, I don't think. If you're going to lose, you're probably losing by too much that this will even do anything, or if you're going to win, you're probably winning by too much that this will even do anything. Rarely does that come into play. The phase attenuated shield is like a little bit of shield. Often also provides the ability to temporarily block phase missile attacks. Is pretty negligible if the enemy Vasari are blasting at you. This is a low priority to me. I'm not usually trying to buff up the shields of my Vasari fleets. However, self-repairing armor, a little bit better, because we do like repairing our armor faster, and it's got a cooldown of a immediate 36% armor restore. So if you're leaning into some defensive abilities, this is the one to go for probably. Self-repairing armor, pretty decent. We don't mind it. Bomber armor, I mostly skip. It's just buffs the armor points and the armor strength of your strike craft, which you don't even care that much unless you're sending your strike craft into a huge mass of point defenses and they're just all being destroyed. This might make them live a bit longer, but it's a very low priority for me. Utility stuff, the Nano Catalyzer Swarm. This is again you can only use this a couple times. Rarely do I use this. This one is, I think, slightly better than the other two because it can boost up your antimatter. Maybe in the early game, boosting up your antimatter for the likes of your Devastator allows you to use your Power Surge more often. That might be really useful because Power Surge is an incredible ability. Maybe it allows your Desolator to shoot an extra couple of phase missile swarms, which might be really useful. That can be a very strong early game ability. So I could see the benefit of putting a little extra antimatter there. But most of the time I skip that, and I'm just trying to get to the antimatter recharger, which comes online a bit later. This one is not finite. It is a constant, huge boost in your antimatter regeneration. I like that one a lot. The gravity stabilizer we talked about just makes this single ship go faster. That's a pass for me. Resonance duration, also a pass for me. Maybe a late game luxury if you've got a billion points in your phase resonance and they're huge buffs and you're going to be in a really long fight and you want those buffs to last for a long time. Maybe, I don't know. Doesn't work for me. I've got other stuff to put on these ships. Antimatter charger, we love it. We put it on anything that's using a lot of antimatter, which is most of our ships. And the deploy Oculus Starbase. We love it. We love being able to drop Oculus Starbases on people if we have a chance. And we've talked through these. We've talked through the likes of the labs, the adjunct the normal labs we kind of like. The adjunct lab is mostly a pass. The exotic refineries we like. The mobile rulership, I guess if you really need it. The mobile fleet beacon is great, but it's very expensive. But being able to just build any ship imaginable, you could put this on one of your capital ships, and that capital ship could then build your Titan, which is pretty cool. So you could build any ship in your whole fleet off of your capital ships. So if you have an insane luxury of being super rich and having a ton of capital ships, you could just make them your frontline fleet producers as well, which could in some situations be pretty amazing. And then likewise, we talked about this as being able to grab up extra phase resonance from stuff you go through. That's fun too. Let's look at our main Titan. Now usually for all the Titans, the priority is getting whatever the upgrades are that are adding extra weapon systems on. So we do the heavy wave cannons right away, giving us 2 heavy wave cannons here. The phase cannon, I think we need the special unlock for it. Yeah, that's like the tier 5 tech, but if we can, we pick this up because it's an absurd DPS, absurd piercing weapon. It's this just gigantic phase cannon we put onto our ship. It's pretty great if you get up to tier 5 tech for that sort of luxury. If we look at our Titan has 4 heavy beams and 12 heavy wave cannons. So this is actually a lot of wave cannon damage towards smaller ships, or a lot of beam damage towards bigger ships. So we are happy probably to put the wave modulator finally to use if you have researched it for some reason. We're happy to put a wave modulator on it. We're also shooting out some heavy missiles that are quite big, so we're pleased to put phase missiles on it as well. That wouldn't be the worst use of our slots here. The Maw enhancer. The Maw is probably the ability that we like the most, so we're usually happy to put a Maw on here. So our slots look something like that. Maybe if you're really maxing out the DPS capabilities, that's not necessarily necessary. What do I think about a micro phase jump enhancer? I think I don't care about that one. I do like the auxiliary hangar, just because the first one is almost free. It's super cheap and doesn't require any tech to unlock. But now we're actually starting to fill up our slots here. Maybe we want other stuff. If we did want our mobile rulership on here and we don't got a lot of slots to work with, we probably want some defensive slots on here so that people aren't just blowing up our Titan right away. And in that case, we really like the self-repairing armor is very strong on your Titan. And then we have the hull plating, which are just also great upgrades if we can fit them in. Those are all tech-based, and there's 3 of them. Probably I am skipping out on some of the aggressive upgrades and leaning more into the defensive upgrades, like the hull plating. Maybe the phase attenuated shield for just some extra shield regeneration, maybe not. Meh. I think it's probably something like that. I'm not worrying too much about the likes of utility. I'm making my other ships carry utility stuff. Although, this is a decent use for your gravity stabilizer to make your Titan go super fast. That's pretty fun too. Infrastructure, we're trying not to pick up, though we do have some unique infrastructure upgrades. You've got this one, which is +6 to both of your research. If for some reason you still need extra research points while you have your Titan online, this is a good way to get them. Mobile fleet beacon is just the same as other ships. Mobile resonance capacitor, just the same as other ships. So put most of this stuff, most of your utility stuff, most of your infrastructure stuff on your other capital ships. Don't waste your valuable Titan slots. Let's talk star bases while we're at it. Where my starbase at? I think I put them up here. The Orculus starbase. Orculus comes out right out, vanilla style with an awful lot of weapons equipped to him. So it's pretty solid as a fighting starbase. So, the tech starbases are much more sort of defensive oriented. They're really hard. They're hard to blow up. The Orculus starbase is also hard to blow up, but has a whole lot of guns on it. And if you've gone for the tech unlocks, we can add more guns to it. The efficient hangars, the very first one is cheap and doesn't require much, I think. I think so. Do you need to research tech for efficient hangars? Maybe you do. Am I crazy? Let's look at the efficient hangars. Yep, there is tech for it. Never mind then. If you get the tech, you could go ahead and do that. And then there's also tech that a single tech that unlocks both additional wave cannons, which is a great choice for fighting off any of the smaller ships, or phase missiles, which is a great choice for being able to fight off any capital size ships. You could load up on extra efficient hangars, efficient hangar 1, 2, and 3 if you want to put a whole bunch of bombers on board, which wouldn't be a bad idea. It would really juice up your combat stats, but you probably want some extra defensive stuff as well. You usually want intelligent armor if you've got that researched. 1, 2, or 3 makes this guy real tanky. The debris reintegration I don't use too often, though. If you were in a real knockdown, drag-out fight and there was a lot of dead stuff, being able to do a huge hull boost heal to hull and armor for the Orculus can be a devastating battle changer, right? If they don't have good ways to really burn down your starbase super fast, maybe if they've got a ton of piercing stuff, your starbase isn't going to last real long. This guy won't really move the needle. But if they're battling away to really take hit points off it, and you get this huge health boost, that can be pretty big. Though I don't use it, I don't see that situation too often. And then the phase jump drive, of course, allows you to jump to different systems. Super fun, super funny. And then the same old infrastructure stuff that you could put on your other capital ships and things, you could put on your starbase if you really wanted to. Though it's a decent use for the likes of research buffs and even exotic refinery buffs for maybe more defensive oriented starbases. If you're going to have a starbase that you want to be able to fly into the enemy, then you probably don't want to put infrastructure on him. You want to have him leaning into offense and defense. Let's talk planet items, the last thing on our list here. Almost the last thing on our list. We're putting a high priority on labor camps if we're the Exodus folks. We talked about the value of the seeking nanites. We talked about what the core stripper does. The matter hypercompiler, I think I talked about, but it's really great. I like it. The thing to note about the hypercompiler is they're very cheap to build, reasonably cheap to build, but they do take one yellow exotic. So around tier 2, tier 3, when this is getting unlocked, I would really like to try to get my hands on a bunch of yellow exotics, because I would love to put a matter hyper compiler just about everywhere I can. It's a big boost to your surface and your orbital mining, and that's right around the time when we really want to try and get our economy to take off and really do fun stuff. This is the defensive uplink we talked about. We're kind of meh about. Let me show you a dark fleet tower. So some people don't know how this works. What you got is a planet with a dark fleet tower, and it says it'll summon 120 supply within 12 AU, astronomical units. That's a distance. So you see this pink purple line pop up once I mouse over it. That's how far I can shoot this stuff. So what I do is I click on this, and I just click on any planet within range, and to that planet I summon 120 supply of units that will, and now I can control them and move them around and tell them to do things, but only within this gravity well. I can't get them to fly away and leave to other gravity wells, and they do not count against my military supply. So there is sort of a neat way of pulling out some extra units out of nowhere and sending them someplace. You can use this in some cases in a defensive manner. Maybe if I've got a front line here that is my fortress world that I'm trying to use as a choke point. If I have worlds further behind with dark Dark Fleet towers. I can use those to summon extra fleets right into my fortress world to help defend it. If we're in a galaxy where stuff is all moving around, sometimes your planets will be able to move around towards enemy planets when suddenly, if I build a Dark Fleet tower, I can summon fleets right onto enemy planets. And you can use it as sort of a harassment. You know, they're not giant fleets, but nobody likes 120 supply of units suddenly in what was their safe backfield, blowing up their metal extractors in their labs and things. So you can use them for some really interesting harassing tactics. And if you do the upgrade to make them the tier 2 tower in in your Tech 5 upgrade path, it does increase the range by about 50%, letting them reach even a little further. So you can use them for some fun, harassing, end game kind of shenanigans. They're sort of interesting in that way. Otherwise, defense we're not too excited about. We do have this really fun, in our support tree here, we have this really fun Vertra Weapons Lab. Now this is something that is unlocked right at the start of the game, but it does cost 1 red exotic that you got to be thoughtful of. Now the Vasari start with 2 of each exotic already in the bank. Usually you're using those to build fast early capital ships, but if you build the Weapons Lab, you're using up one of your red ones, one of your Tauronite, and now you've got to build probably different capital ships than you had originally been planning. So you kind of need some sort of plan of which 3 capital ships you want to build out of your starting elements, and then if you're going to have the Tauronite left over, if you're building a Desolator or if you're building a Devastator, you don't have the extra free Tauronite for that fancy weapons lab, which would be oh so nice for 3 easy research points in the early game. Tricky. Or if you can come up with an extra Tauronite somewhere else from some debris or for some early surveys, this is a great option to get really cheap, really effective warfare research points. Now there's not an easy way to get Empire ones, except for what I will show you in a minute here. The Debris Reclamation Center, you start with 1 on your main planet that is juiced up and extra strong at 24%. So anything that is 2 jumps away from your starting planet, you will get that Debris Reclamation. That's great. We love it a lot. The Adjunct Lab is not too valuable to me. I oftentimes will build these on our asteroids here. Asteroids you can't build as many things on the asteroids, so there's less competition for the slots. So oftentimes I will just build an adjunct lab on the asteroids just to help speed up research. On main planets, I've got other stuff I like to build, right? We talked about the culture resistance one if you're fighting off a culture push for some reason. We talked about my love for the admin uplinks to get extra civilian orbital slots, though this is more of a late game thing. What I often will recommend is, for the Exodus, grabbing your labor camps all the time, everywhere, as quickly as you can. But then, once you're further into the game, don't be afraid to drag your labor camps off and replace them with something better. Our home system would really be better served, probably, with the likes of some crystal-seeking nanites and a Vertra Weapons Lab. And then, we don't have space for the other stuff. Or even if we don't have the Vertra Weapons Lab, maybe a hypercompiler would be an extra 50% surface mining. We're already making 9.6, so it would add another almost 5 metal per second to that. That's a huge boost. I mean, that would be a really good investment there. So slots are valuable. The other thing to know is that our slots are slightly different on other planets. Not too different on the likes of fire and ice, your ice planets or your volcanic planets. But if we go over and we look at our primordial planets, just like we talked about how we love the organic reclamation nanites on them, our primordial planets also have access to these genetic labs, which are the counterpoint to the warfare labs. These are +3 Empire research points, but we can only build these on Terran, ocean, or primordial planets. So again, we kind of love primordial planets because they give us access to some of these really great extra planetary buildings. So primordials are a priority for me early in the game because getting these fast genetics labs up. Now again, these cost a yellow exotic, so they're not, super cheap, but cheap enough to get 3 free research points out of it on the Empire side, which sometimes you're lagging behind on for the Vasari. Super cool, super neat. We like that a lot. I don't think there's anything notable really on Terran planets. They're really the same structures. Oh, the other notable thing, and I don't have any shown here, are moons. And I think it's moons, and is it moons and something else? I think it's moons and gas planets, maybe? On moons, we can build another structure called like an exotic weapons lab or something like that, which is a straight +4 to military warfare research. Really, really, really good. Strongly recommend. If you can get your hands on a moon, you can build that +4 military tech building. A really, really solid one. We like those a lot. Whew, I think that's just about everything we have to talk about. Maybe we want a quick peek into a what's the word? The Alliance rather than the Exodus. We'll just look at their unique tech real quick, just to sort of do the full look at everything. So the Alliance are, stop this from making that horrible noise. The Alliance are much more of focused on building influence in the game to interact with the minor factions. So you have this, instead of your slave labor, you have these Zeno settlements, which are big boosts in influence total and influence recharge rates. So you put a strong emphasis on building Zeno settlements on planets that can hold them, and then that lets you interact with minor factions much earlier in the game at higher levels than other people are able to do. We also have access to these intercultural exchanges, which give us a credit rate income, which is fine. You figure 1 credit is roughly equal to, or 3 credits is roughly equal to 1 metal or 1 crystal. So getting some amount of credits is okay. We're not using them as credits. We're just using them to buy stuff off the market. Or in a team game, maybe you can just send them straight to allies who are using credits. That can be useful. The trouble I have with the Alliance is they push these things. These cultural exchanges are for pushing culture rate, and the culture for the Alliance is just not as good. The benefit right off the bat for it is 6% less factory unit build time. And that's, we like building faster in our factories, but 6% is not much. We would really prefer to have an economic boost off of this, which we don't have. Our culture also gives us a planet regeneration boost, which we don't care about. A little extra influence recharge is good, but factory unit build time up to 24%, starting to be good and worthwhile here. All the way at the end, we have this amazing one, which is our structures take 50% less damage and our planets take 50% less damage. That's a very defensive culture bonus. This is great, but it's deep tier 4, and you don't have a lot of incentives to get culture up and running before that. And you have a bunch of stuff that boosts your culture that you don't care as much about. So we put an emphasis on influence points when we're playing with the Vasari, the Alliance. Is that what they are? The friendly Vasari, not the planet stripping mean one. These guys do not have access to the planet stripping. I'm trying to look at what the rare techs are for them, and I know I'm going to miss some stuff out here and people are going to yell at me in the comments, but that's okay. I don't play the Alliance too much. They are amazing when their influence lines up properly with good minor factions, but if you are playing one without good minor factions to work with, they are suddenly much less amazing. Let's take a look over at the warfare tech to them, see if there's anything really critical that's standing out. The important part of these guys is they have access to the reverse engineered shields over in tier 3. Now this allows for the shield burst ability to happen. So basically it works on all of your ships that have shields. After your shields have been down for a certain amount of time, a burst will activate where you get a whole bunch of shields back after a certain timer ticks off. That's quite good, quite strong. Reverse engineered shields is a really strong tech for the Vasari Alliance folks. They have their own unique Titan, which has its own unique stuff. It's quite good. Just does Titan-y kind of things. They can still do all the fun Orculus Starbase stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Anything else I want to tell you about the Alliance? Not a ton off the top of my head. If you're the Alliance, you'll make friends with the minor factions. If you're the Exodus, you'll burn up all your planets and pull the stuff off of them, all the resources off of them. Yeah, I'm sorry if there's Alliance enjoyers. I'm almost always playing Exodus, so I don't know the Alliance stuff as well. But I will say, when the Alliance lines up right and you get some good minor factions to work with, especially the likes of the Expeditionary Force, where you can grab these early colony seed nanites for your ships, mwah, chef's kiss, it's really wonderful. All right, I've rambled too long already. Thank you for watching. That is a deep dive into Vasari tech and items. And if I think of anything extra, we'll put it down in the comments. And I'm going to do my best to get an Advent one of these up in the very short term for you as well. For any of you deviant culture enjoyers out there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you around.